Across the world, International Women's Day is a moment of reflection, a celebration of progress, and a stark reminder of the struggles that remain. In South Asia, where deep rooted patriarchy meets powerful waves of feminist resistance, the fight for gender equality has never been more urgent or more complex. Women in this region have been leading governments, they have been leading movements, challenging oppressive norms, and shaping policies. Yet, they continue to battle deeply entrenched socio political structures that reinforce violence, exclusion, and discrimination. Welcome to New Wave Global. Today on Unraveled with Marvi Sirmed, we take a closer look at where we stand on gender justice in South Asia. Have we moved forward or are we seeing a rollback of hard earned gains? How do political, religious, and economic structures impact women's rights? And most importantly, what must we do individually and collectively to push back against regression and ensure that gender equality is not just a distant ideal but an urgent priority? In this special episode, we will examine the most pressing gender issues across South Asia: gender based violence, political representation, education, reproductive rights, economic empowerment, and whatnot. We will look at the progress made, the setbacks encountered, and the strategies needed to move forward. A key focus will be on feminist solidarity, how movements across South Asia have influenced each other, and how we can build stronger regional and global networks to amplify our collective struggle. To do justice to this conversation, we are joined by some of the most remarkable women from across the region, leaders who have shaped policy, fought for justice, and redefined the feminist discourse in their countries and even beyond. Let me quickly introduce our guests. From India, we have Begum Syeda Hameed, a renowned scholar, women's rights activist, and former member of India's Planning Commission and National Commission for Women. She has played a key role in shaping development and gender policies at the highest level. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining. A warm welcome. And representing Bangladesh is Khushi Kabir, a formidable human rights activist and a champion of grassroots feminist activism, with decades of work in empowering marginalized communities. From Pakistan, we had to join. I mean, we will shortly be joined by our guests, and I will introduce them. Then, let's begin by setting the context. Gender inequality in South Asia is not a monolith. It manifests differently in each country, shaped by unique histories, unique political landscapes, and peculiar social norms. Yet, there are common patterns. For example, rising gender based violence, the slow progress in political representation, the struggle for reproductive rights, and another common thing is the increasing pushback against feminist movements. So let's try by asking our panelists what, in their view, are the most pressing gender issues in their respective countries today, and how have these challenges evolved over the past few years. So I'll start by with Sayeda and Hameed. Ma'am, India has seen both progress and setbacks in the fight for gender equality. While legislative reforms exist, and we also see a lot of women being part of the panchayat system, the local government system, but socio-political structures often reinforce gender-based discrimination in India, like all other our countries. How do you assess the current state of women's rights in India, particularly in the context of the rise of religious nationalism?
Um, Very recently, 2, 3 days ago, we had 50 years of Towards Equality. The report, which was, uh, in a sense, that was the 50 years ago. Towards Equality was written by two formidable feminists, and I really don't want to, take too much time. But when we reviewed it, it was a conclave of about 3 days. And when we reviewed the report and broke it down, we realized that, we have the issues still remain very palpable, despite the fact that half a century has gone. And it was the questions that you raise, the increasing fundamentalism, um, the Hindutva, um, the wave of Hindutva, is there is a big issue with that. There is also the Hindu Muslim thing going on right now, and also it in a way it impacts this entire the whole gender debate that you have been you gave us. So yeah, you gave us an outline of in your briefing. So I feel that we have it's it we are there is a long way to go. And like, for example, the sustainable development goals, the CEDAW, the issues that you have flagged, we have not really reached that point where we were hoping that we would be able to attain. When The last thing I want to say is that, as a planning commission member, I was the only woman for 10 years in the planning commission, the highest planning body, and it was a very, very difficult situation. But uh, what I did, with the help of women across the country, was to uh, introduce a feminist perspective in every aspect of planning, whether it's power, whether it is agriculture, and every aspect of planning had a gender component. And that was the contribution of the feminist economists. A very, very big step, and it was recognized, with this in this meet in this symposium that we had a couple of days ago. uh,
Yeah.
but it's not sustained. It's not sustained at all. So, every time you take a step forward, and there is, that pushback. So,
Mm.
just as an introduction.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember when you were at the helm of affairs in the Planning Commission, we heard of gender responsive budgeting in India. And that was, I think, a pioneering effort in South Asian region. We did not see, we still do not see gender responsive when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to the economic and financial and monetary policies. We don't hear of gender so often. So it was a remarkable thing to do. But and we will delve on it further uh, once once we kickstart the discussion. But I will quickly go to Khushi. Khushi, Bangladesh has been hailed for its women-led political leadership. But deep-rooted socio-political challenges such as gender-based violence and religious extremism, now we hear of it a lot, then economic inequality, all of these challenges they remain major hurdles in achieving gender equality. In your view, how have socio-political structures in Bangladesh shaped both progress and resistance in the fight for gender equality?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. And it's not such an easy, black and white answer. We've had since 1991, except for 2 years where we had a caretaker government, from 1991 to 2024, August 5th, we've had women who led the country. They were both. We had prime ministers who were women. And yes, there has been, when you look at the gender equality index or some of the social indicators, you see there has been progress in narrowing the gender gap in terms of we have a high life expectancy with women's life expectancy being a little higher than men, which is the natural phenomena. We've decreased, maternal mortality rates and infant and girl preference. So there's no, unlike I think Pakistan and India, Bangladesh has, or even Nepal, Bangladesh, the number of girls, infant child girls born is very high because there isn't this the son preference has gone down drastically in Bangladesh now, even more so in the rural areas and amongst all classes and all categories. Even though at the beginning, when we first got liberated, there was a very strong, for many years, very strong son preference. So there have been other indicators like enrollment in schools, other things like that, which I won't go into details now. But there have been a lot of positive, indicators. What has not happened, and I think when you talked about having women leaders as prime ministers, and so if you're at the top and you're the leader, you think it would have an impact throughout. But you've got to remember, the society is as patriarchal as it was, and each of the political parties which they belong to have not become equal in terms of gender equality. It is very patriarchal, the party. And as the party head, each of the leaders had to negotiate their space in being able to continue to make whatever decisions they want to make acceptable to all the party. And therefore, they were not, none of them were feminists. I think the past prime minister we had a soft spot for trying to increase women's empowerment much more, but everything fell quite short. There were, and then when each time there has been any kind of a movement or something, both the women prime ministers, especially the last one, both felt the need to get the support and to get the tick side that yes, we approve, the approval of religious Islamic parties. And in order to get that approval, they had to make a lot of compromises. And so you had a certain group who came up with a 13-point demand, and most of it was against women, very Taliban style. Their demands were no girls can go to school after grade 8, or then there can be no women working outside. There were about, out of the 13 points, I think about 9 were about curtailing and curbing women's movement. And yet, Sheikh Hasina decides to try and build up a rapport with that party. So or even having a woman's leadership is not enough. I think you have to start changing the mindset. You have to change a system. If you look at now that we've had a uprising, a very public uprising, a people's uprising, and Sheikh Hasina and Awami League was overthrown, and there's been a new interim government in power. Even this government being in power, you feel, keeps making compromises. The only sounds they keep making is more towards appeasing religious groups, Islamist parties. And that's what worries us, because then when this is the message that is being given across, individuals or people feel that they have the right to moral police women, even, to attack women. So those things remain. And I'm sure you will get to the question of what are the major pressing issues and concerns for women these days in Bangladesh. But I just wanted to respond to your question that challenges are there, and even when we had women as head of our governments, the challenges were there where we as women, activists, women's organizations had to make a lot of effort, a lot of push, a lot of rallies, a lot of movement, a lot of spending hours trying to say that this should be done, this should be done. And the biggest challenge is, I think we still don't have, is women's equal rights in inheritance. They're following the Islamic law of inheritance, and Bangladesh has 91% Muslims as in its population. The Hindu inheritance laws have not changed ever. So it is that Hindu women don't inherit. They don't look at the Hindus here, the Hindu men here, don't look at what's happening in India where there has been changes, but they look at what they don't want. You know, when you're a minority, you cling on to your, whatever your identity is and how you feel your identity should be. And it's mostly always controlled by the men. And the Buddhists all follow the Hindu policies and principles. So we have ratified CEDAW, but we've not ratified it in full. So, Section 2 and 16(1)(c) is where it is question of allowing equal rights at all spheres, especially at the personal level. This has not been ratified. And we see that even women, forget the inheritance, even to get access to land, because there is a government policy to give land to landless, If you're a woman, they won't give it to you unless they have stipulated you must have an able-bodied son. And women have said, what rubbish, we are working on in the fields and we are able to control our land ourselves. We don't need a son to be able to control it for us. So these kinds of rules still remain. So, for women who are now in agriculture in large numbers, they still don't get equal opportunities and access. As wage labor, they get half of what the men get. In the garment industries, there are over 60% of the workforce are women, and they get really low wages. The government gives 6-month maternity leaves. Many of us in our organizations, we give 6-month maternity leave as we follow, but not the industries. The industries do not get, they give 12 weeks maternity, which is not enough. And that's not, so here there are a lot of constraints, lot of questions, lot of areas that need to be done. But the most important is the patriarchal mindset that exists both in women and men, and especially men, and the way the men just try to control what society is. Like nowadays, any man on the street feels it's a right to tell you, why aren't you wearing a dupatta? Why aren't you covering yourself properly? Who's given them the right? But they feel that they have the right to be able to do that. They feel that this is their role, which is absolutely unacceptable. So challenges remain. We have in the local government certain reserved seats for women where they are elected by everybody. So it's like 3 constituencies in a local government where, which is for women, 1 woman for 3 constituencies. So there are 9, what we call wards, 9 wards in the Union Parishad. So in the 9 wards, 3 wards, for each 3, there is 1 woman, and that's by direct election. So there is some elected representative at the local level, but at the national level, we don't have a parliament now, but in the last parliament, and the parliament before that, and the parliament before that, it was always reserved seats for women who were not elected, but selected by the parties who are in parliament. So, except I think out of 300 seats, about 20 women got elected only. So parties are not willing to nominate women. So even in leadership roles, you may have a woman as the head of the government, but she's not willing to get a party to nominate enough women. Women who've shown their prowess in being very good MPs or even ministers. Oh no, you won't win the next election. We won't give it to you. We'll give it to someone else for whatever reason they want to give. So it's, having a woman is not enough. It's having a woman who's committed and totally committed to wanting to change and bring in equality in its full meaning. That's important, and that was missing.
Yeah, so you said so many interesting things, and I want to go back to Syeda ji with a couple of questions, intriguing questions. But since we did not discuss these questions, which I'm about to ask, so if you're not comfortable, Syeda ji, you can totally skip them because I did not discuss these questions beforehand with you. But I really want to ask you about uh, you know how Khushi has articulated the entire her very elaborate answer. It got me thinking of intersectionality. It's very important to look at, it's not just man woman, it's about the class, it's about which in India's context, which caste do you, it's not about minority majority as well. There's a caste dynamic within, there's a economic class dynamic within. So a lot of things, when you look at the intersectional view of what women go through. And for example, if we are looking at the minority aspect, we see from outside, from Pakistan, a Muslim majority country, quite an orthodox a kind of interpretation of Islam in my country as well. But for us, it's very strange that Indian Muslims would be so passionate about the teen talaq issue. I mean, three divorces simultaneously are considered regressive in my country, and we have fought against, our women have fought against it, and we have successfully brought changes to our family laws, which are now, so no man could get away with teen talaq. And but in India we see it in a very different context. So can you please explain why is it so? Because the entire Muslim community is then appears as if they are quite regressive in terms of women's rights in Islam.
I think that's a very good question. Uh, when you say entire Muslim community, there is the hardcore lobby, which is the mullahs and the maulanas, and they're very very particular about triple talaq without really understanding. I'm a scholar of Quran, so that's why I do this thing on understanding Islam without actually going into the spirit of the religion and what Islam did. I mean, when the girl child in some parts of pre-Islamic Arab was buried at birth, instantly the woman got property rights. Instantly, the woman had a right to. The woman was exalted, and that in when I insist on it, and a lot of women are, and not a lot of men and women are like-minded in that sense. But there is a lobby, and you can understand, because our country is the kind of the fundamental issue in our country is the Hinduization of the country, which was a Ganga Jamni tehzeeb civilization. I'm sort of not using a lot because of Khushi, I'm using a lot of English, but I love to, go into both languages. So this is something which is, they are very scared, and so they keep regressing and regressing and regressing, and we keep moving forward. So there is that, it's a tufan, in this country, and and the state apparatus then sides with this kind of a this tension and this retrograde. On the one hand, there is the Kumbh Mela, which is a big Hindu festival, and on the other hand, there is the the Muslims are their houses are demolished, their mosques are demolished, and then they take the case to the court. So it's a very trying situation, and I'm a little guarded because this can you're an international this will be on international news. So but I have to say that Muslims in India are victimized intensely, and so they retreat and they regress and they regress. This didn't happen earlier. We had gone, many strides ahead, but now it's that question, and still we raise our voices. Still we raise our voices against this interpretation of religion, which makes it so retrograde. And we quote examples of Pakistan. We used to quote examples of Bangladesh, but now the situation is a little bit different. So there was a case, and it could have hit your news 2 days ago. A very humble Muslim laboring class man and his wife, and the police in a place in Rajasthan called Alwar, they thought there was some kind of some terrorism or some kind of blame, and they broke the wall and they jumped on the bed, and the 2-month-old baby was trampled to death. So I think that this is something which is heinous, absolutely heinous. And there was a lot of political protest, but meaning not a lot, but here and there, their women's groups rose and so on. But like Khushi said, that there are women leaders who have led the country, and Bangladesh has been led by women, India has been led by women, and just about 1 week ago, the chief minister was chosen in this capital city, which is a UT, and it has a cabinet and all. It's a woman, but what kind of a mindset? The mind is not open. It's so convoluted by the kind of oppression and by the whole the cataclysmic point of view that is dinned into them. So the situation is really dire. It's not nothing, no hopefulness at all.
Yeah, and then you talk about the Delhi chief minister. That reminds me of like Khushi said earlier, that men approach you and say cover your head. Incidentally, no man has ever asked me to cover my head. It's only women who approach me and ask me to cover my midriff because my sari is showing my midriff, my blouse is showing my midriff. It's only women who come. There's this collaborator kind of brand of women who collaborate with patriarchy in the hope of getting some some piece of cake, some share in the pie, and they might get the share like I mean, I don't want to say this, but the kind of persona Delhi Prime Minister Chief Minister has, I don't know her personally, but just know her through internet, through Twitter. So she I mean the personalities like this, they exist in Pakistan as well, from among women. So you are right, and they occupying these power positions do not play very well in favor of women, because they are then proxies of men, or they're just extension of
Just
men.
tokenism. If
Tokenism,
we
yeah.
had a chief minister for 10 years, maybe 15 years, in a woman called Sheila Dikshit, so it's a different story. And
Yeah.
now, they are just proxies. They are just proxies, and they are there because of the tokenism of you make a mahila is the word for Hindi word for woman. You just make the mahila, and so you're so pro gender, but even the mindset of the mahila is not really what it should be. And tomorrow is International Women's Day, and this is the point that we are going to make in a big public meeting, that the mind of these people, so-called people in who are elevated in these positions, their minds are totally in a washout.
Yeah, that's right. And also, Khushi, I'll come to you with this now. Um, we have talked about women who have been at the helm of affairs in our countries, in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. Women have been, heading their nations, heading their governments. They have been leaders. But it does not trickle down much in terms of policy. In Pakistan, we see, I'm not sure about how Indira Gandhi impacted policies that favored gender equality, but in Pakistan, surely Benazir Bhutto, you can differ with her, and politically you can criticize her on her choices, but I think on gender equality she did a lot, that she her government signed CEDAW, ratified CEDAW, which was, which came a long way. So in the same way, I'm not sure how you would categorize both women in your country who have been heads of the government, how they have been able to translate, into policy and the law, the concept of gender equality. But still, in all three our nations, it doesn't trickle much down, even if they have helped certain policies, certain pro-women laws, but it doesn't help much in achieving the kind of gender equality we are talking about. Is it because these women are all that, like Syeda ji and I were talking about the tokenism? These women represent their male legacies, and not just these four women who were, heads of the government in our countries, but the other women who are in politics. They just represent their very
Parties.
male legacies. So, what is your assessment in that, Khushi?
Before I start responding to you, I just want to ask you one question, and I want a quick answer. When you said that Benazir Bhutto ratified CEDAW, did she ratify it in full or with reservation?
With reservations.
Yeah, that's it. So ours also is ratified with 2 reservations. As I said, 2 and 16C, which has to do with, inheritance and equal rights. Now, to answer your question, now these women had to prove that they were not just token women, and they were not there because they were one was the wife of the slain president, and the other one was the daughter of the,
In our case, the daughter of a slain prime minister. Yeah.
So that legacy they had to prove, and they had to show that they were able is by trying to be like a man. You take on the same patriarchal system that exists within the parties. The parties are still patriarchal. So even if they themselves tried to make changes, it had to be while appeasing and not appearing too strident. Like Khaleda Zia was, though she wore more chiffons, etc., but she was considered more Muslim for whatever reason.
Okay.
Tina was someone who, was not into chiffons, but she was not considered as much a Muslim, though Hasina made a big thing about how much she prays 5 times a day, she's a good Muslim. So all that is something that they had to prove. Now, in that situation, I think both of them tried to make some changes, policy changes that would impact women. Like Khaleda Zia's one impact, which I feel is very important, is she brought in stipend for girls in schools, so secondary schools too, which meant that there was an incentive in the villages and in the rural areas and for very families from economically backward homes, communities, to send their daughters to school because there was an economic incentive to it, and that increased very quickly the number of girl students in school, which made an impact. It changes your mindset when you're going to school. So the second thing that Hasina made more, she was there for much longer time. She was there for 15 years at one stretch. And before that, she was there once for 5 years. But in that stretch, she did make changes. Like the triple talaq does not exist in Bangladesh as a law. It may exist in the villages, but as a law, it does not. Then do you know this concept of when a husband divorces his wife and then when they want to remarry, he wants to get married to her, she has to marry someone else?
Yes, halala.
Y'all call it halala. In Bangla, it's been contorted to hilla. So halala, hilla, whatever. So that's been banned. And that was legally, it was practiced so much that she took a strong stand and she stopped that. So when we talk about property rights and other personal laws having a uniform, family code and family law, because you have for civil and you have for criminal, you don't follow religious laws for that. Then they say that we cannot, change whatever is there in the Sharia law. And we say, but you have made changes in the Sharia law, including for women. Like, you've taken out halala, you've taken out this triple talaq and all that. So, and giving women the right to divorce, because that's now in the contract. When you register the marriage, in the contract, it is that the woman has the right to divorce. Of course, it is the man who has to give her the right, but that's incorporated into that thing. So yes, they've made changes, and then positive changes which showed in all the statistics and in the, which we've been quoting, where women's gender inequality gap reduced so much. You can see that it's changed people's mindsets. So they had to work and tread a very sensitive line, so that they don't lose the support of the men and the patriarchs within their political organization and the bureaucracy, because the bureaucracy, even if you have a lot of women, Sheikh Hasina brought in a lot of women in the civil service, so in the administrative service. So in all the services now we see a lot of women, and they look so smart and they're doing so well. They speak well, they carry themselves well, and they're not as corrupt. I mean, they're so much more efficient and effective. It's a difficult path that they have to tread, and they did try to tread it, but they also had to compromise.
Yeah, that's right. As someone who has worked extensively with international bodies and, your role in CEDAW and SDGs, etc., do you think these global commitments are effectively influencing national policies and grassroots activism, or is there a growing disconnect between these two?
They are influencing, the grassroots and the civil society, but I don't think there is that much impact on CEDAW and SDGs in the present form of government has been since 2014. So now it's 2025. So I think that these very important instruments, they're only for lip service. And I'm not a politician, but I have worked very closely with the previous government, 2 terms of the previous government, and there were breakthroughs at that time. Like I said, feminist economist, like civil society window. You you open a window to civil society in the highest planning body, and anyone can come. It's there is no restriction, no restraint. So these things they were like a steps towards a great gender affirmation, but that all of that has dwindled away. And like Khushi said, there have been women in the last 10 11 years, but they are basically mouthpieces, and there is no sense of, there is not a deep understanding of the whole aspect of gender, of feminist economists, of the gendering of all policies. There is not that doesn't exist. They can be simply mouthpieces of whatever philosophy. If it's the Hindu Muslim divide, then they are in that. There is no there is for the it be I don't see there is any voice that is raised for women in the political circles. No voice is raised for women. Lot of formalities and all of these niceties carry on, but where has been the great gender breakthrough? There has been nothing. And so I feel that we have a long way to go. It's International Women's Day, and we have to we cannot relinquish hope. So I think that we'll have to work pretty damn hard. And last thing I want to say is that this is a Hindu Muslim divide, but a huge component of civil society, which are all religions, are standing with the Muslim community. They are speaking for them. They are laying the risks that they are taking. So that also definitely is a palpable thing which is happening in this country, and thank God for that.
Absolutely. There are so many voices from even if in the media you see there are Hindus who are speaking against the Hindutva, majoritarianism, which is very reassuring in the sense. Khushi ji, I'll quickly ask you before we wind up the program. How do you see the evolving role of these global feminist, networking and discourse in shaping South Asia's gender struggles? Are there any tensions between the local feminist movements and the international feminist narratives?
No, the international feminist narratives, the global movement and all, may have, there's a lot of exchange in trying to see what the new ideas are. But I won't say they influence. I would say that South Asia has its own strong feminist and women's movement. And we learn from everywhere, not just the West, from the East, the West, from everywhere. So we learn and we want to know what's happening, and is this globally what the situation is, because globally women are oppressed.
Yeah.
So I would say that we learn from our own. I find a lot my entry into South Asian, as a South Asian entity, as an identity. I am very much into a lot of South Asian groups. Began with the women's movement, with the feminist movement. It's the feminist movement who introduced me to be able to talk to Pakistanis who, for me, was 71, and the trauma of 71. I overcome that. It's feminism that helped me to overcome that. So we have so much in South Asia to learn from each other. And that's why I really feel is really important. Our South Asian connectivity is very, very, very important. And that's how we learn from each other. The minoritization that takes place in all our countries of othering those who are the other. And when you say you're happy to see Hindus stand up, it's not Hindu stand up, it's people standing up for what is right. Over here in Bangladesh, the Hindus are minoritized. And you have the Hindu men trying to be very, as you were talking about in India, the Muslim, a group of Muslim trying to go back to triple talaq or whatever. In Bangladesh, you have a small group of Hindu men who want to hold on to the old Hindu values, which the women don't. The women are very articulate. So it's very important that we all learn from each other, we build strength from each other. And what happens, it's the International Women's Day, and the International Women's Day began that because of the working class movement of women, of why the socialist movement was not taking into consideration women's issues as issues. Women's rights are human rights. Women's positions are positions that everybody should take. Women are part of humanity, and you cannot leave half of humanity behind. So we have to, we need links and understanding. I don't think we should be in isolation, but I don't think they influence us as much as we influence them. We influence each other, but there is a lot that we learn.
We can learn from each other. Yeah,
I think we have a lot to learn from each other. Bangladesh has had a long history of peasant movements, women's movements, feminist movements, and in the villages in Bangladesh, because of the NGOs and women's organizations, we have very strong, the women in the village are much stronger, are much more fierce, are much more assertive than a lot of middle-class women in the cities who are much more free to take risks and roles. So I find I get my energy when I work with the rural women who are willing to take any risk.
Absolutely, yeah. So with that, we come to the closing of our discussion. What we have heard today is both a reflection of our struggles and a testament of our resilience. Across South Asia, women have been at the forefront of change, pushing against political, social, and cultural barriers and challenging oppressive structures. And building movements that Khushi just talked about that transcends borders. Yet the reality remains stark. Gender-based violence continues to rise. Political representation remains inadequate. Economic and educational opportunities are still not equitable. And feminist voices are increasingly under attack. We did not we did not talk much about how they are being attacked, but maybe in the next program. But today's discussion has also shown us something else: the power of collective action. We have seen how grassroots movements, legal reforms, international advocacy, and cross border feminist solidarity have made real, tangible impacts. And while the challenges ahead may be formidable, the courage and commitment of those fighting for gender justice are stronger than ever. On this International Women's Day, let us commit not just to celebrating women's achievements, but to actively working for a future where gender equality is not just an aspiration, but is a reality. Thank you to our incredible panelists for their time, insights, and unwavering dedication to this cause. And thank you to all of you for watching. This has been Unraveled with Marvi Sirmed. Until next time, stay engaged, stay critical, and never stop questioning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marvi. And
Marvi.
lovely.
So much. It was lovely, lovely talking both of you. I wish Neelam Appa or Khabar Appa could join, but Khabar Appa tried to join, but she said that she's, she put something in the chat that she was, in a very noisy.
She's an educationist, a professor, right?
Neelam, yes, yes.
Neelam is the professor.
Yeah, I know her. I know her then.
You know her.
What message would you want me to give to Leila through
Tell
Ranjana?
her that we think of her all the time,
Okay.
and sending her all our love. And that she wanted to, I'll send her more pictures she wanted pictures of my granddaughter and daughter, and say that they're both thriving and she would love to have seen them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marvi.
I don't know who Leila is, but I send my best for her early recovery.
Yeah. Thank you, Marvi. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.